What was once one turned into three, reconnecting with our family, a safe space to speak authentically. We raise our cups, unifying as three. We bring freedom in community, random thoughts and golden nugget treats. Welcome Three of Cups community. Let's go ahead and raise the frequency.
People would take from it. But a lot of the time when people talk the way that they talk and vent the way that they vented just in this experience, if you were to approach somebody with a sense of a sugar-coated answer of compassion and they're in this kind of mindset, if you're not telling them straight out exactly what they need to hear, they are going to continue rationalizing answers upon answers upon answers to justify actions upon actions upon actions. If a person doesn't learn how to be very potent about their direct answer to someone that speaks in this manner, they're going to continue experiencing the same types of conversations where a person is not holding themselves responsible, but continuously approaching them and venting in the same manner without practicing self-responsibility and self-awareness. Let's say this person approached her differently and chose to do a sugar-coated response that was more softened, right? It could particularly, let's say that this person approached her through a more softened approach. That is possibly, like, I can't necessarily myself assume that would work, but someone in a mindset where they're so used to others compensating, where they're not compensating for themselves, they're used to a lot of sugar-coated statements to help them rationalize themselves out of things. A lot of the time, if you approach a person too many times with sugar-coated approaches and you're not direct about what they need to hear, they will never really understand the message. They may understand a part of it, but they will not hear it unless you say it directly to them. Yes, it's gonna come off rude. It's gonna come off mean. It's gonna come off like the person is being inconsiderate for another person's feelings. It's gonna come off like the person is being insensitive. It's gonna come off very cold. But a lot of the time, what most folks are reacting to when they hear someone responding in that kind of context and they react to it, they're reacting from a wounded ego. So if you're seeing the response of that person responding to her as being cold and heartless, you're likely reacting and triggered by a wounded ego within yourself, because the way that she's responding to her is also from a space of personal boundaries within herself. She's not going to compromise a position within herself of being compassionate towards a situation that requires a very potent and direct response. Being mindful about that potent response is required, and being responsible about the potency of it is required. In that person's response to her, there was no disrespect. Most people may take it that way. That's their prerogative. But in that response, that person was actually responding in a space where they were giving that person the medicine they needed to understand they need to look at themselves. And that person was setting a boundary in their own way of letting them know, I'm not going to coddle you, and I'm not going to stroke your ego, and I'm not going to pour into this conversation with more statements that don't encourage you to look at yourself. And I'm not going to pour into this conversation with talking about somebody else that has upset you. I'm going to pour into this conversation through statements of having you look at yourself, not allowing the conversation to have me only focus on what you're upset at. This person's approach and response is commonly viewed as being very insensitive and also a person who is just very cold, like they don't care. In fact, that's the most misunderstood approach to this. A person who actually approaches a conversation like this is actually the most thoughtful person, because they're not going to sugarcoat things that you need to hear. They're actually going to tell you the truth without nurturing the version of you that wants to continue operating in the energy that you're showing up as in that conversation. They're pushing you to be better than the way you're showing up through telling you directly the truth about what they're seeing from you and what you're doing to somebody else. This person is not promoting a polished mask of this is how you should do things so you don't hurt somebody's feelings. Sometimes you're going to say things that are going to hurt someone's feelings. Okay, you are. And that is why you have to be responsible with how you're delivering your feedback to someone that operates in this energy. If you're not practicing your personal self-responsibility of potency as you're speaking, and all you're doing is just talking to the point where it's just blatantly disrespecting someone, then you are just not really coming from a good place at that point. You're just now coming from a hurt space within yourself, and that's where you're talking from. But a person that is not going to mask their own personal response that revolves around holding someone else responsible for themselves and will say it directly how they believe they need to say it, and they know it's not disrespectful, and they know they don't need to apologize for it, and they make that very clear to the person they're talking to because they know that person is overly sensitive in that moment, and they think that they most likely are going to receive your statements as being an insult more than insight. That's likely why she said, "I'm not sorry for saying that to you." It's time to stop polishing and dressing up how we respond to people that are still spiraling in the cycle of personal unaccountability, of personal lack of responsibility for themselves, and to start to directly tell them the truth about themselves when they're busy complaining about other people, instead of encouraging the continuation of talking about what someone else did that pissed them off, because that is redundant. It's redundant. That person's choice of action has nothing to do with identifying the root cause of why you're upset in the first place. The consequence of response has everything to do with how you respond to that person's choice of reaction, but that starts from you looking at yourself. If you're not around people that push you to look at yourself, they're just nurturing your ego, your wounded ego. Pay attention. Pay attention. I'll see you in the next episode.
Coming up on 3 of Cups.